All right, so this video is going to be about the ZMF Sound. I didn't coin the term the ZMF Sound. I think a number of our owners who own a number of our headphones kind of came up with the idea, and they've all ended up as part of my collection, and I tune each one as kind of like the next headphone I want to own in my collection. So obviously, while there's a number of variations to our headphones based on what wood or what pads you get, there is a finite sound that I'm after when I tune our headphones. And that's, kind of the beauty of headphones and why there's plenty of like awesome brands out there. I'm typically someone who likes the headphones I make, and I mostly like just about every headphone I listen to out there too, and see the merit in it for different use cases. And so there's everything in between as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and just kind of look at measurements that, we're going to have published on the site already or very soon. And, we're talking about the Verite closed. And one thing that's kind of important to just kind of talk about is that, raw responses are really important. I think they're, the most obviously natural, unfiltered response to a headphone. If you're like me and kind of enjoy looking at DF responses just because that's kind of how your brain is tuned, then I use the, audio precision diffused field measurements as well, and usually look at those more than I do raw responses. Not that I think that's better. I actually think raw responses are better, but that's just how my brain is kind of wired at this point. I've got also the difference between the HATS measurements and AECM 206 flat plate measurements on here. It's really interesting to go through our different headphones and kind of see the, the differences and how, a closed or open headphone is affected by the different couplers from Brule and Kerr, Larson Davis, Gross, and all that, or the, 7108 coupler. And you can see in the Verite closed, there actually is in this dotted line a little bit less bass, which I think is more natural to how I perceive the Verite closed, and a little bit more treble and smoother treble in certain areas of the frequency response. And it is important to note this is the same headphone. I measured the same headphone on both of these couplers back to back and tried to normalize them right around 1K. And so as far as the ZMF Sound, I think the Verite closed kind of epitomizes it, as well as a lot of other headphones, is that a lot of our headphones have a little bit of a dip and somewhere in that 2 to 5K area. And that's important because, I've just found that any stridency in this area, I typically find a little bit too much for my ears. Some of our headphones have it more than others. The Otor and Icon definitely have a little more, stridency in that area. And what it comes down to is that while there are differences between our headphones, they all do kind of share some characteristics. A lot of times people will ask me, hey, how come you didn't tune the bass to kind of fit more of that prototypical Harman target? And we'll talk about the Harman target a bit later on, and what that means and how I perceive it. But why do you not have more of an elevated bass as it gets lower? And there's two important things to point out. One is that open headphones and closed headphones cannot be tuned exactly the same with exactly the same driver. And, I've actually tuned the Verite closed to exactly the same tuning as the Verite open. And so you simply can't take the same driver, have the same target curve, and have that work in whether the headphone is totally open, totally closed, because you're going to end up with a different perceived result. And while you could dig really deep through the measurements and see exactly where all that is and try to figure out everywhere that's correlating to what you're doing with damping, match some of the subjectivity with some of the objectivity of the measurements as, I'm tuning a headphone. And what I've found continuously with closed headphones, if you just make the bass kind of go up and up and up in all the design types, if I were to tune every headphone like the Icon with a bass that was just very downsloped, you would end up with somewhat bloated sounding headphone, especially with the beryllium driver. Whereas if you have a little bit of a downslope to where the bass level at 20 hertz is very close to where your 1000 hertz frequency level is, then you end up with a little bit more of a natural sound. And you know, you can tune all these things in and out of a headphone and listen to them back to back, and then deciding whether per driver type, does that mean extending the bass outward and upward like on an Icon, or like on the Beryllium driver, giving it some drop off, because that's something that I have very purposely tuned in and out of each headphone. And just as we look at the treble area here, I tend to find that this 1K area for me is really important as to where how I'm tuning the bass and the treble. And I typically, on the Brule and Kara at least, never want to see any treble go above that 1K area. If I ever get a spike that goes above the 1K area, and it does maybe a little bit with this same headphone on the 7108 unit, but it doesn't on the Brule and Kara, and that's what I look for consistently when I'm in R&D is, hey, am I making sure that all the treble is below that 1K? And I find that's kind of, you know, a lot of people say our headphones are kind of resolving and, you know, have enough detail but don't come across bright at all. For me, that's the threshold, is once that spike and anywhere in the treble starts to go above that 1K area, I start to hear that as kind of bright. And so the other thing that's worth talking about with our headphones is just kind of that, you know, a lot of people listen to the Verite closed and they say, oh, it's a very open sounding headphone. And, you know, in tuning a headphone, there's a lot of things you can do, from the, you know, the frontal damping with the, you know, kind of bop mesh that we used to use and the Titan mesh that we use now, and how the headphone acoustical damping is designed. And I'm going to go into that a lot further in a month or two here on our videos. But, you know, the ZMF Sound for me, a lot of it has to do with not over damping or under damping the headphone, so that it has a middle ground to where you do hear, you know, the decay of the wood a little bit. So yeah, I know we went through a lot of information in this video. I know some of it may contradict each other, and that's kind of, you know, part of why working with a bunch of different driver types and tuning them to an optimal sound can be, you know, exciting, as you get a bunch of different sounds that kind of fit in within this range. And I think we all, you know, have our own ZMF sound, and just meaning we all have a perceived range of sound that we enjoy. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is finding what your own, you know, gamut of enjoyment for different sound quality is. So thanks for watching this video, and definitely check out our other videos on our YouTube channel, and I'll check you next time.